And good afternoon. My name is Ryan Belmore, and I'm the owner and publisher of WhatsUpNewp. And we are continuing our conversations this week. Yesterday, we had a great conversation with Newport School Superintendent Colleen Burns-Germain. If you missed that conversation, you can catch it on WhatsUpNewp.com. She joins us every single month. You can watch it there. You can share it with your friends, family, and those who care about what's going on at Newport Public Schools. Mr. Frank Jeff Prosnitz joins me for all of these conversations. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing fine, Ryan. How are you?
Good, and we're going to dive right into it. Newport Mayor Jeanne-Marie Napolitano joins us today. Hi, Mayor.
Hi, how are you?
Doing all right, and yourself?
Very good, thank you.
Mayor, it is the last day of Newport Irish Heritage Month, and it's been great to have back.
Yes, it has. I think everybody looked forward to it with a lot of anticipation. We weren't greeted with the best weather, but everybody had their best faces on and had a great time. So it was a nice St. Patrick's Day.
Certainly was. It was Ireland-like weather here for the parade, Frank.
Yeah, actually, they had better weather than we did.
but the mayor, of course, has brought back a lot of good experiences from Ireland itself.
Yes, we were really entertained very nicely over in Ireland. The weather held out for the most part, and they did have to cancel their parade in Kinsale, and they had taken me up to Cork. And as I was in Cork for their parade, I was really kind of surprised. They had me on a reviewing stand. At the very end, it started to rain, and this gentleman comes running over in a suit with an umbrella, and he holds it over my head, and we're talking. And all of a sudden, there's photographers around taking pictures. And after he left, I had inquired with the gentleman who had brought me there. And I said, "Who was that guy?" He said, "That was the Minister of Ireland." I almost died. I had no idea, but it was very nice. Very nice.
Great memories. What's the value of having a sister city?
I think the value is that in some ways we're in our own little communities with our own issues and whatever we consider problems or things like that. And it gives people an opportunity to see how they live elsewhere, not only in the United States, but in other countries. Some of the things that I've learned, they're much more in tune to, say, climate change and energy savings. And this is true of not only Ireland, but also in Japan. In Japan, they don't have napkins. Everything is washing your hands as opposed to using a lot of paper. It's just very interesting when you visit other countries to see how they adapt to things that we're trying to adapt to. Like climate change and saving energy and doing the things that we have to do to improve the environment in the future.
Are there any linkages with trade or anything like that go on?
Absolutely. It's so funny because I ran into people constantly in Ireland saying that they were familiar somewhat with Newport. They weren't from necessarily Rhode Island. However, they knew our sister city was Kinsale. There's certain trades and gift shops they have over there, restaurants, those sorts of things. And a week prior to the Irish visiting us for St. Patrick's Day parade, we had 8 visitors from Kinsale, from their hospitality industry. And they stayed and they shopped and they came around Newport, looked at the different restaurants, saw some of the different menus. It just expands our knowledge of other communities. Certainly, there has been some trade, even in Italy. I know they had brought over some of their products, particularly olive oil, but we'd like to expand on that in the future.
I have, we've had a number of people have sent in some questions. I want to run through those quickly and then
Sure.
get to some other issues, but I
Sure.
want to make sure we touch on those items that people thought were important. Some of them are very localized, and maybe more of just a heads up rather than an actual question.
Sure.
So we had someone, well, I'll just read it as it is. Can someone be directed to clean up the walkway periodically from Navy Street parking lot over toward Trinity Church? It has been filled with a lot of litter for several months, and that was a comment from an individual. I don't know if you're aware of anything like that, or that's just something to put on your radar.
Did you say Navy? What
I'm
street?
sorry, Nary.
Mary Street.
Those are my eyes. Nary.
Okay, from Mary Street to
Trinity
over
Church.
to
Trinity
Trinity. That certainly we can. I can make them aware of it. I don't know if they have called in to perhaps either Scott Wheeler or Mr. Riccio, but I can bring that to their attention.
The next question we have is, this is someone who says, I am a resident living in Historic Hill and would like to know why traffic is not being monitored on Memorial Drive. It seems most vehicles ignore the 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. Also, the noise level with trucks, motorcycles, vehicles with blown out mufflers cause an unbelievable amount of noise pollution. Is there not a way to curb the vehicle noise? Residents here on the Hill are to keep the integrity of their historical homes up to par, but the traffic is allowed to disobey the law.
Well, I would just say that there were a number of citations issued last year with motorcycles. We'll continue that effort. I do understand what they're saying because those pipes have been modified on some of the motorcycles, and it really does create a distraction. It's very loud, certainly upsetting to people, particularly after night times when they're racing out of town. So we will continue to monitor that.
And I assume that goes along with one other, Ryan. Let me just read this real quickly, but pretty much the same. Somebody had asked, will the city continue its efforts to control the roar of my motorcycles and some cars throughout the city, especially on Memorial Boulevard? So I think that's kind of the same question.
Yeah, I and again, we're just starting out into the season, and I think the police will be well aware of it. Certainly, we expect that there will be new citations issued for those that don't know, but they also have put out the message board about these straight pipes. And if you're, loud, and I noticed they're much quieter on Broadway with that message board up. Not to say that it doesn't happen on occasion, but as soon as they see that message board, they figure, oh, they're looking for motorcycles just to really rev it up down there. But I'll bring it to the police attention again, and maybe we can get the message board out, not only on Broadway, but also on Memorial.
Excellent.
And Frank, I just jumped back in here because I want to use this as an educational opportunity. Mayor, if to that person's question, best places to call for these types of issues.
Sure.
Who should they be contacting? Obviously, is City Council the best person, or is a dirty parking lot? Is there a better number or better person to contact?
With the parking lot, because we own Mary Street, and I'm assuming, I'll go down there, take a look, but I'm assuming that maybe they're unaware of it, and we can, because the city owns that lot and hires the people that work there, we can ask them to do some of the cleanup. Certainly if there's being trash thrown around in that area, I can understand people being upset. As far as the noise goes with the motorcycles, I would encourage them to call to the police station. There's a non-emergency number if they choose to call that, 847-1306, and report what they're hearing or seeing there. And certainly the police have an obligation to go and check it out. But I can tell you last year, there was a special effort toward the motorcycles. And I do understand what they're saying. I mean, I live next to, and just look next to the bridge practically. And they come up there sometimes. And I'll get on the phone if I know that there's going to be a whole group coming over with the motorcycles and really kind of showing off for the neighbors, almost like, hey, I own this street. I'll call. And I just don't think you should have to put up with it.
On littering questions, people should call the Department of Public Works. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. They can certainly call either Mr. Riccios or even Scott's office with the Parks and Recreation. And they do a really good job in terms of cleaning things up.
Yeah. So it seems to me like the travel should be call the department first. If you don't get satisfaction, call the mayor.
Oh, they can call any council member. Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
But any council member, really. And I found, by and large, the council being very helpful with residents' concerns. They'll either bring it back to the manager or bring it to the appropriate departments. And all of our counselors have been very concerned about the different areas they represent. At large, it's the entire city. So I give them a lot of credit, too, for following through on some of this.
Yeah. So here's a question we got that kind of is an overriding to a number of them. It says, on too many occasions, I have left a message or sent an email to a City Hall staff member with no response. Is there anything that can be done to correct this?
Without knowing who they're sending it to or for what it's for, I'd be hesitant to kind of venture on that one. I have no idea who they're trying to call or what they're trying to get accomplished. And I will tell you that in some positions, if they're calling people, they're out on the road. They're out in the city doing their job. So they may not get an immediate phone call back. I know that gets a little discouraging at times, but you can also leave a message and request a phone call back.
A couple of other things real quickly. Eastons Beach, any update on that?
No, we just, I believe we have something coming up on our April 13th docket. And we will be sending out a request for proposal and with a firm that we have been working with. And just for the assessment as to how to move forward. I don't anticipate really First Beach being done immediately. I mean, we have to have the assessment. We have to know what we can use still and what needs to be taken down.
Question, and one that I think is certainly really relevant, is what will the city do to monitor and control the new regulations for short-term rentals?
We have been working with the zoning department, zoning officers, and certainly we will be checking it out. The clearest indication to most people that you have a Airbnb that is probably not properly registered is when you see a number of vehicles in and out. That's usually when I get the phone calls, and I know others get the phone calls. In other words, with some of the smaller neighborhoods, when they all of a sudden they see cars they've never seen before, and there's limited parking, that's usually an indication that possibly they're running an Airbnb. I'd first check with the city, make sure you have the address, and you check with the city to see if they're registered. If they are not registered, we can contact our zoning officer to contact the individuals involved. And yes, it will be enforced.
So press release comes out the other day that Newport and Middletown are exploring a unified school district. How did that come about, and what are your expectations?
Well, it was after Middletown had went for their own assessment of their schools, and what they found out was that it was a lot more money than they ever anticipated. And then they also knew that Newport had experienced all sorts of cost increases, whether it was material, supply chain items, that sort of thing. And they started talking to RIDE about the costs that they were given. And RIDE had actually suggested that they talk to us about the potential for some sort of unification. So it's at its very preliminary stages right now. And there's really, I would guess that within the next week or so, council will be meeting with individuals from both RIDE and the city to ask questions. It's just like having something new, opening the box and saying, wait a minute, I got to read the directions first. I got to know what I'm doing, picking out all the pieces. We've got to get ourselves organized, and we've got to get the correct answers before we present something to the public. I know everybody wants to know everything, but council has a lot of questions at this point too.
Yeah, and this will eventually have to be, if it comes to it, would have to be a referendum of the both communities.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. The voters would have to approve it. I mean, it looks very, just from the surface, it looks very interesting in terms of the finances. For years, we've heard about other schools, other districts receiving, 70, 80, 90% reimbursement on different, whether it be their building or their annual cost from the state. And when this was presented to us, they stated up to 80% potentially could be the reimbursement for Newport Middletown. But, there's a lot of questions that go along with this. So we need the opportunity to ask those questions and get the correct information to the public.
It's an interesting prospect because, of course, if all of this happens, it could mean millions of dollars not spent from local coffers.
Absolutely. It would be just on the surface, without getting into all the details, it could be a win-win for the kids in terms of the programming and the number of students in a class, but also for the taxpayers. And that seems to be a perennial problem for us every time there's a larger increase than anticipated from the school department. People start complaining about the schools. Well, the schools, have been operating as best as they could with the information and the dollars that they have. But now this might be an opportunity to kind of change the dynamic somewhat and be able to offer the students and taxpayers the best bang for their buck.
Right?
Yeah, I just have one that just popped in my head because I believe you hold this person at a very high regard, perhaps a friend. But earlier this week on Tuesday, Senate leadership up at the State House proposed honoring former Senate President Teresa Paiva-Weed by naming CCRI Newport campus the Teresa Paiva-Weed campus. Just your reaction.
I can't think of a better person. Teresa, in my mind, was amazing as to what she was able to accomplish for not only the citizens of Newport, but for the state during her terms in office. And, Teresa really is the one that kind of changed the whole use in the North End. We used to talk a lot because my whole thing was rehabbing what we had there and bringing services there. It was the same with Teresa. And when the Navy excised the property on which CCRI now stands, the original intent was to have it go to housing, subsidized housing. And I said, wait a minute, we've got housing now that we're not even able to really provide them with the proper kind of housing, upgraded and everything. And yet there's other services that are needed in the North End. And there's other services needed by younger students or younger people in the state. They have to go over to Warwick if they want to go to the community college. What about a satellite office? And that actually came from Teresa. But if you look at what's in the North End right now, we were building a community. It was CCRI. It was the healthcare center. It was the daycare center, all within walking distance of a community that sometimes didn't have that extra car to drive the kids around. We were also able to not rehab, but totally remove Ptolemy Hill housing, which was old barracks during World War II, and rebuild something that won a national award. So she built a community there, and it was her influence. She was the one that talked to Senator John Chafee at the time about having a satellite office for CCRI. So I can't think of anybody that would be more deserving of an honor like that. I was very surprised. I heard it, and that was quite a surprise, but well deserved.
I have one more, Frank, and then I'll give you back your interview. And I might be stealing your thunder here. Today's the last day of Women's History Month, and I don't think we've ever asked you this before, but you've been doing this a long time, and it wasn't common for women to get into government, city council when you started this. I'm not saying you're old. I'm just saying. Now
you can say it.
But who inspired you? Who gave you the belief that you could do what you're doing?
I would have to say my mother. There were 4 girls in my family, and she always told us that regardless of what life hands us, we need to be able to be independent. She encouraged us to work outside the house. She encouraged us to have kids, but also to accept responsibility. She was a force in our household, and there were 9 kids in my family. My mother always worked part-time. Granted, you can't work with 9 kids, but she was a very strong influence, very strong.
Ryan, that was a great question. I want to follow up on it. And I want to ask you what advice you would give to young women or girls who are graduating high school or graduating college who might have some notion of getting into government and getting into politics. What would your advice be to them?
And I've said this to a lot of young people: get involved. And it doesn't matter whether you get involved in a board or commission, a nonprofit group, but see what it's like elsewhere. And I don't, it not elsewhere other than your house. Usually, when you're young, you're thinking about, oh, what am I going to wear tomorrow? Where am I going to go? This sort of thing. You've got to get out of yourself, and you really should get involved in just one thing. And you'd be surprised where it would lead you. I think part of the reason I got into government, I used to, coach the Little League. Um, I had the Cub Scouts. Always had, the parent teachers group. Always had a job of leadership, and I thought, I bet you I can do this at the government level too. I got to tell you, the guys weren't too happy in the beginning, but all of them turned out to be wonderful. So I would encourage people to get involved outside of themselves.
Excellent. A couple of other quick things I wanted to touch on. North End development. Where are we with that now?
Right now, we're just waiting for the final approval of certain terms. I know that LAG wants to get back to us, which is the planning group, I guess, for community benefits. And, we're just working on that. There's been a couple phone calls, a couple questions back and forth, just waiting to finalize what they have for us.
Anything from Carpionato?
Just that they are still interested. As late as last week, I received a phone call asking about the progress that's being made by DOT. They were a bit concerned when they heard there might be a delay, but that didn't materialize. And right now, and I haven't found out yet, but it appears that they're laying some cement pipes, and it may be for drainage right at the corner of Malbone and Connell Highway. There's some really deep trenches there and big cement, piping. So I'm hoping that's what it is.
I have a quick one, Frank.
Okay.
City Council hosted a workshop on food truck locations earlier this week. The abridged version that you tell people while you're walking down the street.
Yes. The abridged version is, I found the food truck that was located on Bellevue Avenue a bit problematic. It was at an intersection. And if you ever shop in that shopping center or go to dinner at one of the restaurants there, and you come out East Bowery Street, it is next to impossible to see oncoming traffic with the big truck there. I had asked about perhaps Jones Street, and I want to follow up on it with administration. I was told that half of Jones Street is residential, the other half is commercial, because as all Newporters really know, you always see the tour buses up there. Well, why can't they park in one of those spaces? I just think on Bellevue Avenue, where they're located, it's a bit difficult with the traffic. They indicated they only stay there for 2 hours. However, other indications have been that they've been there longer. So, it's a difficult one. We wish we had a place where perhaps food trucks could congregate. That would be great, in an area. One of the things that Councilman Holder brought up was possibly down at the Gateway Center, the parking lot down there. I think it would be ideal, to have, some food trucks, perhaps during the summer in that area.
Excellent. That was a little bit of a long walk. There was a long abridged version. We're going for like a mile walk.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Charter revisions. The Charter Review Commission have they completed their work?
They're still continuing to work. They're on schedule to report back to us in May, so that we can review the work. They meet regularly, and I've got to admit the chairwoman, Maureen Cronin, has done an excellent job of pulling that whole group together.
Are there items that you see emerging from the Charter Commission that are of any note, or is it just cleanup work?
I'm not sure. They have talked about term limits. They've talked about, the one thing, and I know I had read it in the paper, and they were saying to have a strong mayor government. Personally, I don't like that idea. I like the idea of the mayor. Okay, I think that's fine. However, the expertise of someone else, a city manager that's doing the work 24 hours a day, is important to me. If they were to do, vote the other way and say a strong mayor, I definitely don't think I'd be wanting to do that job. It's just so much involved. Newport is a really, it's the biggest little city in the state, and probably Rhode Island.
Are you saying that they would want a strong mayor and eliminate the city manager position?
Well, that's what it sounded like, according to some of the newspaper articles. And I was asked about it before, and I said, nope. I said, I wouldn't be interested in that.
So the travel on the charter, on any kind of charter revisions, is they would present their charter revision proposals to the council, right? Which would then decide whether or not to put them on the ballot. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. Any charter provision that they, it would have to be approved by council and then put on the ballot.
It'll be anxious to see what they come up with in May, because that'll be interesting. And term
Oh,
limits,
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Term limits again is on the ballot in Westerly in a different way. One last question I have, and that's kind of a budget update.
Sure.
I don't think you heard the question, Frank.
No, you're watching me walk around.
Well, we love the tour.
Sorry. Kids come at you at the weirdest time. Okay, I'm settled.
So where are we with the budget process at this point? And are you envisioning any kind of a tax increase as a result of this year's budget?
There may be a nominal tax increase. There usually is. We didn't do one last year. And I just think that, we need to be realistic about how to move forward. So I don't anticipate a large one. And if there's a percentage tax increase that's beyond our, scope, then we're going to have to work it out, because I just think people are still feeling the effects of the COVID and, some of the lack of income. There are others that seem to be doing okay, but I do think there may be a small increase in the taxes.
I'm kind of in that vein also, when I think of thinking in terms of tourism,
Mm-hmm.
the high price of gasoline
Oh,
Has anybody tried to digest that to understand what that could be a plus, it could be a minus in terms of the
right.
city?
Well, to tell you the truth, I think it might be a plus in terms of Newport when you think about it, because Newport has a lot of things going on at different times. It's easily accessible by most New England states, New York and New Jersey. It's not breaking the bank. Uh, some of the airlines are having problems with their rates and stuff. I just think Newport, and the reason I say this is I was chair of Discover Newport after 9/11, and everybody was bemoaning the fact that 9/11 changed everything for everybody. They didn't want to do long travel. They didn't want to. They wanted to be someplace safe. And when we did a little bit of an analysis, most people that came to Newport, and I got to tell you, we fared better than almost any other area in New England, including Boston and New York, because people said in Newport they felt safe. And it was interesting. They felt safe because the Navy was here. They felt safe because we were small. They felt safe because they could get here by car. So, it's going to be interesting to see what happens this year. Last year, we did tremendously well, as did the hotels. And we only had, a few months of it, but we did very well.
And speaking of a lot going on, I think a good place to finish up here is a reminder to everybody that a good time to come to Newport if you're not in Newport or get out in Newport. Tomorrow, April 1st, starts Newport Restaurant Week.
Yes.
Newport and Bristol counties. It also starts Newport Daffodil Days,
Yep.
whole month-long celebration. So lots of bright and delicious things to be seen in the area.
And you can combine it all by eating daffodil. No, I'm sorry.
See the daffodils and then go eat.
That's right.
Yeah, Mayor, I want to thank you. It's great to have you on. It's great to have the update, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Right. That is Mayor Jeanne-Marie Napolitano. We thank her for her time today. Great job there, Mr. Frank.
So I think the big takeaway, if we want to look for a takeaway from this, was that the mayor is anticipating a small tax increase, and we'll see where that goes. But kind of an indication, none last year, maybe a little one this year.
Yes, and also, if you see something, say something, and if you see a dirty parking lot, if you hear something that's loud, don't trust that somebody else called it in or emailed it in. Let somebody at City Hall know, the appropriate department. And then if you don't hear from them, contact your ward counselor or city councilor at large. All sorts of great stuff there, Frank.
And in the end, contact us and we'll ask the questions.
There you go. We will be joined by somebody from City Council as well as somebody from School Committee again in April.
Excellent.
All right there, Mr. Prosnitz.
All right. Thank you, Ryan.
All right. And on behalf of Frank Prosnitz as well as myself, I want to thank Mayor Jeanne-Marie Napolitano for joining us. If you missed any portion of this interview, you can watch it live. You can watch the replay on WhatsUpNewp.com. Thanks for watching.